Say fun things so that I can put it in the beginning of the episode.
I love puppies.
I'm literally just gonna put that in.
Perfect.
Hi, friends, and welcome to another episode of the Reading Queens podcast. We are here to talk to you about murder mysteries. Woo!
Yeah.
I was like, I need to make like a soundtrack, or not a soundtrack, but like a little button I can push for like sound noises, kind of thing, to preempt my announcements. But I never do. I always just think about it afterwards. But anyway, already, side note.
Oh, I could be
how
the
my brain
sound.
is.
I could be the sound.
Okay. You want to just make random noises in the background?
Dun 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 dun. There you go.
Yeah, there we
Murder
go.
mystery.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, so we've talked about thrillers and stuff before. We talked about suspense, but this was kind of more of just like a murder mystery, but with other subgenres. But we will talk about that later. Also, hello, I am Valia. I have two ladies joining me. Please say hello.
Hi, this is Bum 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 Abby.
And I'm Tess.
And we are having so much fun already. It's great. It's great. Yeah, so I think both of you, we have done a conversation where we talked about thrillers before. So I thought,
Yes.
yeah, so it would be like a really fun thing for us to talk about a different subgenre in this like huge genre of things that we like to read. I'm making no sense in my head right now. I'm so tired.
Makes sense to me, but I'm
Okay,
also very tired. So maybe our brains are just on the same wavelength.
It's great. It's great. I'm
Well, I
glad
got
somebody
enough
understands
energy
me.
for both of you, so
Yeah.
it's all good.
Perfect.
I just had coffee.
Thank you. I love that. But yes, Abby, start us off. How are you doing? How is life?
Life is pretty good right now. So I was just telling these ladies before we hit record, but I turned in this fantasy book that's been on my plate since the pandemic, and it feels so good. But now I have to switch my brain into like, yeah, from serious drug addiction, some dead bodies to like middle grade with pet manticores and like magic things and happy animals. So it's just like, oh, I've had like 3 years of just seriousness. And now I need to be happy and trying to like get my mind to adjust. So this weekend, I went on a spontaneous adventure to the cool part of Denver, which like I'm just not cool enough to be in the trendy part of town. Like, I'm straight up suburb all the way. I'm just not cool. And so I drove downtown and freaking parallel parked all by myself.
Whoa.
Wow.
And I know that was huge.
It is
And
huge.
I poured candles with a friend, and we went to this really cool Denver market thing. And it's kind of like airport food in the sense you walk into this warehouse and there's 8 to 10 different restaurants. And you can kind of go tapas style if you want and get a little thing from everything, or just order and sit. And yeah, we were the only probably, I don't know, uncool people there. Everyone was in their Colorado business clothes, which means like fancy Lululemon clothes. And we were there with
Oh
like,
my gosh.
I don't know, 3-day-old clothes and a little baby. It was just like, well, we're here. So but I was trying to be fun and get in the brain space for manticores. So that's how I'm doing.
Nice.
I love it. Also, I love how you guys are the ones who are always like, especially you, Abby, is like, read middle grade. It's like it destroys your soul. And now you're like, I'm writing middle grade, but it's happy. I'm like, what? So
Well, there's
confused.
both. There's both.
I know. It's just fun. I'm excited for you to have something fun on your plate
Yeah, me
as
too,
a
me
book.
too.
Like that's great. All
Yeah.
right, Tess, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. I don't know if I mentioned this in my last time I was on the podcast, but I was planning to move, or have been planning to move, and it all happened within like 21
A
days.
week.
Yeah, it was so fast. Like I am now a homeowner and I'm in my house. We just moved in everything on Saturday, so that was just a few days ago. We're not fully unpacked yet, but I am in my office right now. And before, my office was in like the communal space in my apartment. It was in the living room, in like this little corner that I did the best of. So this is like, I have a real live office that's just a whole office.
For
And
you.
yeah, and I have like the door closed. So I'm like, this is the first time I'm like recording a podcast where I'm like in privacy in my nice little space. So it's feeling really good. And I'm just very excited to finish putting things together. Well, while at the same time being incredibly tired and not wanting to put things together, and just like wanting it to be done already. So that's my big news. I'm very happy in my new house. It's so pretty. And I love my office already, even if I don't, all I have is like boxes and boxes of books and my like empty bookcases. So soon that will be a little more cozy.
I'm so excited about like just having your own space to work, to write is just like next level of, just, I know your career has already been amazing, but like now you have your own office. It's like,
like this is legit.
Yeah,
it's like office.
Yeah. Which is so funny, but yeah, I'm so excited. Yeah, we've been freaking out about her Tess getting into a house for like 3 weeks now. We're just like, oh my gosh, we're so excited for you nonstop. So yeah, I'm excited to see how you decorate because you have like such like nice style, and like your bookshelves always look really nice, and you have all this art. I'm like just like excited to see what you do with your space. But anyway,
I think it'll look cool. I hope at least.
It will.
Oh, it will.
You are the cool. You are the cool person. Okay, you are the cool person of this group. So I am 100%. Believe in you. There you go.
You would fit in.
I like
in the trendy
cool.
parts of Denver.
There you go.
Yeah, I don't consider myself a cool person, but wow, thanks guys.
Yeah,
my friends think I'm cool, so I'll just say that next time someone doesn't think I'm cool. I'll be like, you know what? My friends told me I'm really cool. So
yeah,
that's
all about public opinion.
It's true. There's a big group of us, okay? So it's not just a tiny amount of friends. We're a whole herd of people.
Like herd. A whole herd says I'm cool. Herd. So
exactly. Or I guess we can call ourselves murder. I always love that, the murder of crows.
Yes.
Like
that is one of the
murder of writers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love it. That should be us. Anyway, segue it into murder.
Yeah.
All right. I'm going first, right? I got my books.
Yes. Abby's going to start us off. We are going to talk about murder mysteries. And when we were talking about what books we're reading, it was really interesting because we did all read a little bit of a different like subgenre within the murder mystery world, which is super fun for me. So I'm like excited to hear what you guys think about yours, and then I'll talk about mine, and then like see how it compares, to like what's a murder mystery kind of thing. But anyway, that's all I'm going to say. Abby, it's all you.
Okay. So my book, I think I might have mentioned him before, but it's the DCI Logan crime thrillers. So he adds thrillers to the end, but it's by J.D. Kirk. He's an indie author. And I would categorize this more as police procedural than necessarily thrillers. So right now there's, I think like 15 books in this series, and I've read maybe 13 of them.
Okay.
And
oh, wow.
Yeah, what I love, I know, this is what I did after like our IVF egg retrieval, where you're so bloated you can't like even roll off the couch. I just sat and read about murders, and it was awesome. So
perfect.
Yeah, it was great. But what I really love about this series is, this is especially for you, Valia, is they're set in Scotland. Because I went there last year, I actually recognized, some of the places he was talking about. We're like, oh, I know what road he's talking about. I had to take the cabbie, and there's like one cab service for that entire area, and his name's Ian. Like, we became best friends.
Yeah.
So yeah, and just the atmosphere of it was really great. They do lean a little darker police procedural, which for murder was up my alley. But yeah, I just highly recommend them. And also, to dovetail onto this, I also kind of wanted to talk about or bring up the shows Broadchurch and the show Shetland. So Shetland is also a type of police procedural detective show based in Scotland, actually in the Shetland Isles. So it's really cool to be able to see how that show portrays Scottish police procedural stuff, especially because it's based on a book series by Anne Cleeves.
Okay.
And they're super atmospheric as well, just gray skies and everything. Whereas in DCI Logan, gosh, probably every other chapter it's like storming and raining. So like, there's not quite as much as rain in the Shetland, but it's, every single episode it's like cloudy and gray. And you really get the Scottish accents. You can hear it in Shetland.
Yeah.
Just super fun. So much so you kind of have to put the subtitles half the time.
Yep,
It's
yep.
so thick. But that's what's fun about it, So it's really fun comparing that type of police procedural where it's a little more quiet, not quite as thriller, more about the people and the relationships versus the DCI Logan, which takes place in a bigger city. And they kind of go out, I believe it's Glasgow. I don't believe it's Edinburgh. But they go out and see and solve murders.
Yeah.
And then you compare that to Broadchurch, which David Tennant actually was a main character in it, which
I love him.
Yeah, so great.
Abby's having a moment. Hold on.
I am. So again, you still get the accents. It's still like kind of a police procedural, not quite as heavy, but you definitely not quite as heavy as the DCI Logan and the Shetland, because you don't see as many, and they're in the office trying to figure it out. But if you really want to see the impact a murder has on a small community, watch Broadchurch. And in the subsequent seasons of it, it really dives into how media can impact a small community, especially when it relates to a murder. So it's really interesting to get some of the psychological stuff and like the procedural things, especially when you have two different book series shows in the same country, but different parts of the country and slightly different flavors of police procedural. So yeah, I would highly recommend binging them.
Yeah, that sounds fun. So when you talk about like police procedurals, oh my gosh, I can never say that word correctly, but anyway, how like in depth is it? Like, do they actually like really sit down and kind of dive into like the process of, like going through files and going through all the different like DNA and all that other stuff? Or is it more of like a overall broad, they went and talked to like the Emmy one time and then they have to like do all their legwork themselves? Like which side of it?
Yeah, I would say the DCI Logan leans more into they're doing the work, you see the work, you're waiting for paperwork to be done. Same with Shetland, but since he has, because it's a TV show and it's a little bit different. He can like assign it to underlings, and so the underlings will come back and be like, hey, I found this. Whereas DCI Logan, you might see him like going through some paperwork a bit more. Broadchurch is more about the people overall in that. So yeah, you kind of have a little bit more paperwork, DNA, waiting for results, keeps talking to the autopsy, like that sort of thing. Shetland's a little more middle. I feel like the books leans more people rather than police procedural, but the show leans a little more police procedural. And then, Broadchurch is just general, more detective, some, but leans more people, impact of community, that sort of thing.
That's really interesting because the first one, the DC one that you were talking about, he puts thriller at the end of it, and it sounds like they're more like actually a proper procedural versus a thriller. So that's very interesting. I guess it's also interesting for like it's also interesting for like where, because they are Scottish, so maybe in their mind like that market, like that's what they would consider it, you know what I mean, versus us being a thriller is something like fast-paced, like all this craziness, blah blah.
And I would still say like it is pretty fast paced for a police procedural. Like it's kind of that happy medium. Like I was definitely turning pages, but they're definitely waiting on like DNA stuff and going through things and trying to figure it out. And they have to drive through the hills and Scottish one road and angry drivers as they're irritated and stuff. So it is like really interesting.
Yeah, this is not the book that I'm going to talk about later, but I did read a police procedural that was like very heavy on the procedural, and it felt this book was very long for me, and I love that kind of stuff. But I also feel like because they spend a lot of a lot of time with all the people as well, like they had a bunch of different point of views for this one, because it was like this community that was built on, I think I've talked about this book before, but it's a community that's built on basically like the lake, in the middle of the lake, it's one side is like Welsh and the other side is English. And so they had one Welsh and one English detective that had to come out to this murder because it was like on the lake. So they
Yeah,
both had
yeah.
to work together. But it was very interesting because they took that really slow approach to the actual police work, and then they had a bunch of point of views, so like random chapters would be from like other suspects and stuff like that, and we would get to see like go back and present time. So it was just like a very heavily involved book, and I feel like it also was sold to me as a thriller. And I
Yeah.
was like, what? But cool. Like,
I feel like police procedural is kind of the hard sci-fi of murder mysteries.
yeah,
You can kind of get like,
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's funny. Okay, anyway, that's all I'm gonna say about that. But Tess, what about your book?
Okay, so I read last time I was on the podcast, I did mention that I was reading this, and so now I get to actually talk about the book that I was reading. So I read Arsenic and Adobo by Mia P. Manansala. And this book revolves around a Filipino restaurant. And I was sold immediately just because, little known fact, my mom's side of the family is Filipino. So when I saw like that it really dove deep into like family and like the food. And I was like, okay, this is already reminding me of like my childhood favorite meals from great grandma. And so I was like, oh, this is amazing. Like I haven't read that many books, like maybe not even any by like a Filipino author that actually dives into like Filipino culture, and food and family. And so I was like, yes, this sounds awesome. And it definitely gave me like the coziest vibes. And I'll say this one, because we're talking subgenres, is considered a cozy mystery. And I haven't read any cozy mysteries aside from one of Valia's. So I like didn't know what really a cozy mystery would be. And definitely like it reminded me a lot of Small Town Romance because it had some of the same necessary setup. It was in a small town. It focuses heavily on like the business owners. And it was funny because like the mystery was actually felt very much like not centric. And I do wonder if that's like a staple of cozy mystery. It was way more about the food and the restaurants. She went to a bunch of restaurants to like try and figure out who could possibly be responsible for this murder, because she is being targeted as a suspect because this murder happened in her aunt's restaurant. And there were certain like leads of evidence that tied the main character to it. And the main character works at the restaurant. And she had history, like negative history with the victim. So there were certain things that like made her seem like she could be a suspect. But of course, trying to figure it out, because the detective on the case like believed it was her. So she's going to go and try and see what she can figure out on her own. And so she is like, oh, well, maybe it was another restaurant, because the victim was a food critic, and he was a very harsh food critic. So to figure it out, she has to try all this food and go to all these restaurants. And it was funny because it was like pages and pages of describing the food and getting the food, and then like a little bit of like trying to figure out the mystery,
the murder.
Also, I thought that was funny. And I will say that like the first half was my favorite because I was very deep into the like the food and the cozy aspects. But I will say that I started craving more mystery toward the end. And I was starting to get a little impatient with like, there'd be like a lead or someone would have called her and she like would be like, oh, I can't like call this person back because I need to go to this family dinner and like do all this other stuff. I'm like, honestly, answer your phone. There's a murder and you're a suspect. I'm like, just like, are you not scared and worried? And that's like the vibe of a cozy mystery is what I'm understanding. It's different from a thriller where it's like you are, as a reader, you're like feeling like afraid for them, and you're like, it's like really fast paced and it's just bam, bam, bam. And this one was way more about the vibes and the cozy feels. And so I did get a little impatient in the second half. I'm like, I want to feel a little more scared. I want to feel like I want to be a little more captivated by the mystery aspect. And I want to actually start suspecting someone. Like I didn't suspect anybody. and I didn't like, there wasn't the same like guessing game. We're like, oh, it could be this person. Like it could be this person. Everyone she interviewed, I was like, it's not going to be this person. Like there's zero, like I don't feel as a reader that there's any way that it's this person. And so I'm like, I wonder if that's like, you don't have to worry about those stakes as much in a cozy. And for the
Right,
people
yeah.
who I know love cozy mysteries, they like that. They really like to be able to not focus on like the like stress and the fear, and you just get to have a fun mystery but also get to really enjoy these cozy vibes. So I'm probably not going to be a like a cozy mystery reader after this. I really like Valia's because yours had paranormal aspects, and I think
Yeah.
that's something that I could get into more, is a paranormal cozy mystery. I think would be a little more my jam. Because this one, it was just so set in the real world. I'm like, okay, so I'm also in the real world with all real world things. And if I was pinned as a suspect, I would be so anxious, you guys. I would be going to family dinner. I would be running around trying to do
Yeah.
whatever I could. I would be really scared. I would have like the police on speed dial. So when like someone tried, like if things start to get tense, I'm not gonna be like, oh, I should go in here and like have a chat with this person. I'd be like, nope, I'm gonna call the police and you guys are gonna come save me. So I did have to suspend my disbelief toward the end because I'm like, no, you gotta worry about your life here, girl. But I loved that took place in a Filipino restaurant. I loved the mention of the food, and I'm like, okay, I need to replicate my great grandma's adobo because I did it before I was vegan and it was delicious. I finally figured it out because my grandma's is different, and that's kind of a thing. Everyone has like their family adobo, and you're like, oh yeah, no, this is how it's made. Like I grew up thinking that it was all adobo was the same. And I went to go look for a recipe. I'm like, this doesn't have the ingredients my grandma made because she taught me how to make it, but like visually, verbally.
Yeah,
I didn't actually write it down.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, wait, it's missing like 3 ingredients. And I was like, okay, obviously my grandma's is different. So I finally figured out after testing it, and now I need to do it again, but vegan. So this book got me craving great grandma's adobo, which was like one of my favorite meals growing up. So it gave me those cozy vibes. I love that about it.
Yeah, I was very curious to hear how you were gonna fare with this book because you are like a thriller reader and a person that actually gets like very like physically involved in the book. Like you do get tense and you get, so like when you told me that you were reading that, I was like very curious. I'm like, it is a cozy mystery, which means it has none of that.
Yeah.
It's just like we're here for the vibes, kind of thing versus like the actual like emotional turmoil and stuff. So I was very curious to see. I do think that as somebody who reads like murder mysteries and cozy mysteries, like I am also a paranormal cozy mysteries person versus like because I love
like
them.
not a contemporary cozy.
Yeah, because I feel like with the paranormal, I mean, you are correct. Cozy mysteries, they do really get off on that small town or small community feel. Like you do really kind of like you have, one series will have like 20 books and it's like literally around the same, one like amateur mystery solver, person who's like never had any training. And I feel like the big thing with them, the big pull is that you really stay with this like small community of people for like the duration of this whole series and stuff. And I feel like with paranormal, you get that magic aspect with it that has like all the fun stuff, like, talking cats and magical forests and whatever. And so it makes it like so much more exciting to be in this community.
Yeah,
So
that makes sense. I think that's why I liked yours better than like overall. I liked this one, but it definitely was missing the things that I need in a book for me to continue with a certain genre.
Yes.
But yeah.
I have a cozy mystery series that it's not paranormal, but it is contemporary and the murder is a little more centric and the girl picks up her stupid phone. Like she's not an idiot. So, okay. I'd be curious but it's called The Colorado Wine Mysteries by Kate Lansing. So she's a local author here and I got to beta read a couple of the earlier books. But I love it because it's also the amateur sleuth, like young professional businesswoman who owns her own winery where she like makes makes wine blends and stuff. And the murder happens in the first chapter with like the wine critic her restaurant is hinged upon drops dead. And so she kind of has a personal stake in it. Whereas, okay, if the murder isn't solved, her business is going under.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
nobody's going to want to like eat someplace where the person died after drinking her wine,
Right,
And
right.
so, but yeah, it's cozy. It's a murder mystery. You have that like fun. There's a cat named Pino in it, like that fun, cozy feel. But it's set in Boulder, which is not a small town. So it is like more trendy place in Colorado. So you get some different aspects of the cozy mystery. But because it's like a winery, there's food involved. So you get all the wine flavors and like palettes and stuff like that and all the food stuff. And I'm pretty sure she included like a recipe in the back of each book where you could try
Yeah, yeah,
food
yeah.
that was talked about paired with a wine. So I'm kind
Oh,
of curious to see if that type of cozy might be closer to what you're looking for. I mean, if you don't go full paranormal or whatever. But
yeah, that'd be
I really
interesting to
enjoyed
try
them.
another one because it is like a brand new genre to me. So,
Mm-hmm.
so I would be, yeah, I'd be really curious to see if there is like one that maybe gives me a little bit more of the like thriller excitement without, having to, without it being
Yeah.
like totally, full on
Yeah.
just
You
cozy
can't sleep
vibes.
afterwards because you're like
Yeah.
tired.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Somewhere that's
Yeah.
right in the middle.
Yeah. I mean, the main character, Parker, is not an idiot. She picks up her phone, but I used to like have the cozy stuff, but there's food
Yeah.
and she's very much aware there's a murder she needs to solve.
Yeah,
So,
that might be a fun one to try. I'll have to keep that one in mind.
Yeah, I'm actually gonna add that too. I'm curious because kind of so the book that I read kind of fits in like that middle place between a cozy mystery and police procedurals. Like it's so it's Cross Her Heart by Melinda Lee. Yes, Melinda Lee. I really had to think about that. And there's like 6 or 7 books in this series now, I think. And she is a detective, and in the first book, her sister is murdered, and so she has to go back to her hometown where her father basically beat up and murdered her mom and then shot himself. And so she's like
yeah,
never been
that's hard
home.
for a cozy.
Right, right. It's not really cozy because the book opens up with that. Like you see the flashback. She was 8 years old and she like got her sister and brother out of the house. It's like it's told this, like it's not visual like it would be in a thriller or
Yeah,
like a
yeah.
super
Okay.
suspense. So like it happened and they mention it, but it's not like a visual, like they're not writing like brains and guts, spilled across the
Yeah,
floor
yeah.
thing. So yeah, so it opens up with that. And so then like the next chapter is basically her arresting this perp and then her getting the call that, her sister has been murdered and they think it's her husband that did it. And so she goes back and she's like, okay, well, now I'm gonna like have to figure out who did what. And so she kind of like takes it upon herself to figure out. And then the husband's best friend is a former police officer within that town. He got injured during a job, and so he was a canine officer. So he has like the canine dog retired
Hmm.
with him.
Dog.
Oh,
And
the doggy buddy, my
yeah,
favorite.
that was literally my favorite part of the whole thing is the dog.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm here for the dog. Um, no, but it was kind of one of those things where I think it's supposed to be like romantic suspense. And it had like, the murder mystery of her sister, like who killed her and where the husband is because he like disappears. And so they were trying to figure it out, and it had a little bit more of that, like they actually sat down and like talked about the evidence that they found, and they went and had interviews with the sheriff, and the sheriff was like, okay, I understand that you guys are both professionals, you are going to do your own sleuthing, like I admit that you will, so like I will try to keep you in the loop as much as possible, you'll keep me in the loop if you what you find out. So you kind of see them go through the process of trying to figure out what happened, kind of retracing the sister's steps and retracing the husband's steps and stuff like that. And I think the one part that was really, really missing for me, and this is something that cozy mysteries do really well, is the
Mm.
relationship aspect. And so I felt like
Yep,
even though
yep.
they were like stuck together and they were working together, I wasn't getting like a connection between them. I was like, you guys are just like two people on a page. Like I don't okay,
You'd think that a
cool.
romantic suspense would really, really dig deep
Yes.
into
Yeah, pump that up.
the connections and the emotions and the relationship. So that's interesting.
Yeah, I was very surprised because I mean, I grew up on When I was like 12 years old and we first moved to America, I used to go to like Savers or, any secondhand store, and they would have these Harlequin Intrigue romances for like 10 cents each. So I have like a whole library of these Harlequin Intrigue because it was literally romance and suspense, like mystery, which was
That's
like my
awesome.
awesome spot, kind of like a grown-up Nancy Drew, but with like romance. And I still remember, this is a side note, but I still remember this one book. I cannot remember what it's called, but this girl who's like a total nerd or something, like she just does not care about what she looks like, nothing, but she has to like stay hidden on this farm that's full of these dudes that are like used to work for police or for FBI, and now they have like their own company that they run. And so she had to like help them like infiltrate this place, whatever. And so she gets like a makeover and she has to work with the guy that's like she hates. And it was like a solid
Oh my
enemies
gosh,
to
that sounds
lovers
so
with a
fun.
makeover. Yeah.
Yes.
I need to find it. I feel like I can find it on like Kindle or something and see if I can like figure out what it was. But I reread that book like all the time. It was great. But anyway, so that's what I kind of was like expecting from this series. And I mean, this series has a a ton of good reviews. Like people love these books. And so I was very curious about them, but I just feel like the writing didn't have enough of that connection for me to be like, yeah, I want to read more, because even though the police stuff was like, yeah, like the police stuff was legit, I was missing like the connection part. And so I'm like,
Mhm.
okay, they solved the murder. Cool. That's it. Like I'm done.
But what
Um,
about the kiss?
yeah, there was no kissing. They barely even like
Mm.
hugged one time. And I think there was two times where
Hand touches? Were there hand touches?
twice.
Oh,
There
okay.
were
Ah.
two, but it wasn't even like a tense. Like, okay, so I like picture hand touches as this like, I don't know, like an intense lingering thing that like you focus on. Yeah, at one point I
Yeah.
had to go back and read it because she was like, let go of his hand, and I was like, wait, you guys were touching? When did that happen? Yeah, so that was my experience. But yeah, that's all. That's all I'm gonna say about it.
It's so
So
funny.
you read a book and it had some things that were good and it had some things that you didn't so much like.
Yes. And I am
That happens.
apparently in the minority, which is fine.
I
Um,
have a really random, really funny story about hand touching.
oh yeah, do it. I want to hear it.
Okay. Real life story, completely random. But when my husband and I were first dating, I like, I'm such, dating's uncomfortable for me. Didn't hate it. So it took me like 6 months to be willing to hold his hand in public. Like, I kid you
Love
not.
it.
That's how like, I was. But his hands are like, my hands aren't small. They're just kind of average. I got long fingers. His hands aren't hands. They're like paws. Like they're twice, the girth of them is twice the girth of a normal hand. And so when we were first trying to hold hands, my hand wouldn't fit. It
Oh
stretched
my
out
God.
all my fingers
Oh my
because they're
gosh.
so huge and it hurt all the time. So the first like 3 months, he thought I just didn't like to hold hands because it would hurt so much. And every time like we had to do long distance or something, we get back together, I would have to re-stretch out my hand
Oh,
to get my
wow.
fingers to fit
Oh my
between his like paw
goodness.
mitts. And like, yeah. So anytime we like, I don't know, forget to hold hands for a while, it hurts. It freaking hurts. Like
That
I
is
have to
so
ice my
funny.
hands.
Oh my
So
gosh.
yeah. Sometimes holding hands isn't romantic, guys. It hurts. It's sacrifice.
Oh my
Ugh,
gosh, can I just use that as your beginning audio thing?
sure.
Oh my
Oh, I
goodness.
love that. I love that. Yeah, but like if you're going into a romance suspense, they better be touching
I
hands,
know.
okay? Or touching
Their
knees,
hands
like sitting
better
close
fit.
together. Yeah.
You can't have like bare paws on one of them. Like,
Oh my gosh, I love that so much. Thank you for sharing, because that
you're
just,
welcome.
yeah, that's awesome. Anyway, back to books. Abby, what are you reading next?
Well, I've got a couple things. I just finished Poster Girl by Veronica Roth,
Okay.
and I really liked it.
Oh, I have
And
that.
oh yeah, it's I like what she did with the dystopian genre. Like, I like how she, like, it's not, hey, we tore down the dystopian government, everything's good. It's this girl was like in deep with it, and now her life turned upside down, and she's trying to come to terms, and I just really enjoyed it. And then reading Andrew Main's 4th book in the Underwater Investigative Unit because it just came out.
I saw that.
So, yeah. So I'm reading it. And then I really want to pick up, I have it on my like to read next once I finish this Sea Storm by Andrew Main book. I really need to get back into the middle grade mindset. So I'm going to reread some of Shannon Messenger's stuff.
Nice.
She's got like, yeah. So
my
I
kiddo
need
loves
to
her books.
prep my brain. Yeah, they're so popular. So yeah, I'm just going to try to jump back in and be happy, think happy things, adventure, happy, no dead bodies. So got it.
Love it. I'm glad we got this episode out of the way then so that you can
right?
focus on happy. Tess, what about you? What are you reading next?
Well, I am hoping I can get back into, because I read the first couple chapters of Heart of the Sun Warrior by Sulin Tan, which is like my number one most anticipated read of the year, but then I packed it away because I moved. And so I'm hoping I can unpack this week and start that. If not, then I'll probably just read some random stuff on my Kindle. So I'm in between books, but that is the book that I want to read next.
Perfect. I am looking at my Kindle currently because I just have my Kindle. I have 3 books and I need to be reading City of Ghosts, and I am, but it's like a process. So I can't just be like, really? This. Like I want to read it slowly, okay? Because I want to write in the book. So it has to be like when I'm sitting down ready to like make notes, and I can't just be like, this is what I'm reading. But I am still in my random romance like fast read of bazillion books. So I think I'm gonna do The Game Plan by Michaela Smeltzer next, and then The Highland Fling by Megan Quinn, because it's
Is it Scottish?
I have to read it.
Okay, I need to add that to my Goodreads right now. The Highland Fling.
It's literally about like a girl. I can't remember if she's like with her sister or is she by herself, but she like gets a job at like a cafe somewhere in the middle of like the Highlands. I think like there's just like a small town there, and so she like ends up, I think he's like a grump. I mean he's Scottish, so he has to be a grump, right?
Of course.
And it's like a whole thing. So maybe I'll read that one first because I just read a hockey romance. So maybe I'll do that one first and then do the hockey romance after that. But yeah, I saw that and I was like, oh my gosh, this is like perfect for me right now. I have to.
Yes.
So yeah, so that's my reading. I've been reading just a lot of romance. I have a bunch of fantasy books that I need to read, and I just like have not been feeling it. I don't know if it's just because I'm writing so much and I'm like I need like feels versus world building.
Yeah.
Or what it is. But anyway, yeah. So yeah, if you guys have any good murder mystery recommendations for us, throw them in the comments on Instagram at Reading Queens Pod. Yes, please. And if you have any other like subgenres that we didn't mention when it comes to murder mysteries, also let us know, because I feel like there's just so many like little things that can go in there. But anyway, yeah, so give us a follow on Instagram and Facebook at Reading Queens Pod, and then be back next week to have another fun conversation about some fun books that we're gonna read and talk about. And before you go, please leave us a star rating or a review, and then tell everybody to come hang out with us, because this is it. This is where it's at. This is the best time of your Wednesday. I know it. I just know it.
We're trendy.
Yeah, exactly. Candles. We're cool, okay? We have Tess.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, Tess ups our cool factor by like.
That's a lot of pressure, you guys. I don't know about that.
No. It's natural to you. It's natural.
Yeah, you don't have to do anything. You just have to be. No. Okay, and we're just cooler. Anyway.
Yep.
That's it. The chaos is over. We'll talk to you later. Okay, bye.
Bye.
Bye.